everybody. Welcome back to another great episode of the Silver Lyming. I'm Anne, your host, and the reason I put this podcast together, if you're not familiar, is I really just want to do my best to share hope for those who are going through Lyme and tick-borne illness. I've had other guests on my show that have told me that this process is actually much worse than cancer, that have had cancer and have gone through that as well. And not that it's a comparison by any sake, but this is more of an invisible illness that a lot of people are walking around with that maybe don't understand it. And so if you're someone who has unanswered health challenges in your body, please do consider getting yourself screened adequately for Lyme and tick-borne illness. And there is method in that in saying tick-borne illness because ticks don't just transmit Lyme. They also have a plethora of co-infections that they could transmit, things like Bartonella, Babesia, ehrlichiosis, Rocky Mountain spotted fever. And so it's very important for us to know that the Lyme test is only looking for Lyme. And in order to do your due diligence, you really do need to get screened for the full tick-borne panel and not just Lyme. And there are a few different ways that you can go about getting tested if you're struggling with that. Brace yourself, put your seatbelt on if you need to, but do know that a lot of times the more sensitive testing is not necessarily covered by insurance and can be somewhat costly. But in all fairness to yourself, you really do need to proceed and get this more sensitive screening. There's a company called IGeneX that you could do that through. And thankfully, they've just released a product called AccuDart, which is at a much more attractive cost point. I think it's about $100 if I remember correctly. And that does test for not just Lyme, but my guest maybe can help us expand on this a little bit as she goes through her thing, but also co-infections as well. And so that's, again, very important that you're not just getting screened for Lyme, but you're also getting tested for the co-infections. I would encourage you, if you are thinking about getting tested, start with the standard two-tier testing that they give you, which generally is covered through insurance. It's called ELISA and Western blot, but know in the back of your mind that has a 50 to 65% accuracy rate, which is deplorable for something that we use as a medical diagnostic tool, because for those of us that aren't aware of it and we get a negative result that way, we are moving on to the next thing to look at as a possibility for us when in fact it very much still could be tick-borne illness. And that test is just not sensitive enough for many reasons, which I could do a whole entire episode about that, but we'll save you from that today. And just keep in mind, again, if you did the standard two-tier testing, the Western blot and the ELISA test, and you get a negative, you very much still could have a positive. And so you should move forward with more sensitive testing from either maybe like IGeneX, Vibrant. There's a couple other companies that have the better testing to get, but AccuDart, again, is something offered through IGeneX that is much more affordable. And so if you have questions about that, you can feel free to reach out to me. My guest today, Jackie Confalone, is joining. She's also part of the PA Lyme Resource Network. She is the patient referral coordinator and does a really nice job at helping people find a specialist in Lyme and tick-borne illness, because again, it's not something that all doctors necessarily understand. Again, if we think about cancer, if we have cancer, we're going to go to a cancer specialist. If we have Lyme and tick-borne illness, we should be going to a Lyme and tick-borne illness specialist. And right now, especially in the state of Pennsylvania, that generally is also not covered through insurance, which is something that I could ask you if you're looking for something to do with yourself. Please reach out to our local elected officials and let them know that we need to do better as a state. We need to do better as a country on helping people who are experiencing this, because I can tell you firsthand how expensive it is. And I'm not totally sure how people are supposed to afford to have health for themselves if they can't even afford testing, let alone long-term treatment plans. But at any rate, without further ado, my guest today again is Jackie Confalone. She is joining me from the Reading, Pennsylvania area as well. And she and I have met through our parent organization, PA Lyme Resource Network, and that is an all-volunteer-based organization. So if you're also having a couple extra bucks or feeling so compelled after this, you could go onto the PA Lyme Resource Network website and donate. We would greatly appreciate that, because that really helps us to continue as a group to be able to educate people like you who are listening to hopefully stay safer or get to treatment and wellness faster. Jackie, again, thank you for being here. If you don't mind, if you could please just tell us a little bit more about yourself and how you became involved with the space of Lyme and tick-borne illness.
As Ann said, I'm Jackie Confalone, and I actually have been involved in the world of Lyme disease for close to 20 years. And mine came about in an unusual way. I actually, in 2004, both of my both my mother and my mother-in-law died within 4 months of each other. And my daughter went off to college 6 hours away. And in that process, I went from being a type A functioning, organized person to not being able to function at all. It looked like I was having a nervous breakdown, and it felt like it. I couldn't, I did my job for about a month and a half, and then I couldn't even function at my job. It came to the point where I couldn't dress myself. I couldn't make decisions. I couldn't cook dinner. I couldn't do anything. Um, I knew in my mind and my heart that something was seriously wrong. Everyone around me thought that that's exactly what was happening. I was just kind of anxious and depressed from all the important women in my life, either dying or going off to school. Um, so I was getting counseling, and I went to see a psychiatrist through my family doctor, and he put me on a medication that made me much worse. So we had to stop that. We tried a second medication. I still didn't do very good. And eventually, after about 3 or 4 months into this, my counselor sent me to another psychiatrist in Lidditz, and he happened to be very knowledgeable about early Alzheimer's disease because his wife pretty much began to lose her memory in her early 40s. And so he became very involved in this and did a lot of research, and he knew about neurological Lyme disease. And after running some tests and treating me for probably about a month, he had me do this checklist of neurological Lyme symptoms, and I had at least half of them. And he said to me, I think you need to get tested for Lyme disease, at which point I thought he was crazy, not me. Um, I do have a wooded area behind my house, and I jumped in the leaves with my kids and was out there doing a lot of things, but I had never seen a tick bite or had a rash from a tick bite. So he gave me a list of what he considered Lyme literate doctors. And eventually, after a few months of feeling kind of normal again, I didn't do anything, but then I eventually went down the list and I picked the first doctor who was no more than an hour away from me that took insurance. And it took me probably about 2 years till I did that. And in my first visit, he did some testing, and I was positive for Lyme disease, Bartonella, and Babesia. So that was my entry into Lyme disease world.
Yeah, and that's quite the entry. Getting to find out that you've got not just Lyme, but Bartonella and Babesia. Can you talk a little bit about, so was it all neurological for you? Did you have any physical symptoms as well? Maybe a little bit more detail about the actual symptoms that you were experiencing, please.
Yeah, it was primarily neurological at that point. I had some fatigue, but I didn't know that they were related to each other. And the doctor that I saw also had experienced Lyme disease and almost lost his practice as a result of it. So he actually started me on IV antibiotics. And then we did that for a few months. He basically treated the Lyme first, and then he went after the Babesia and eventually the Bartonella. It took about 2.5 years of treatment till I was completely cleared of symptoms and felt like I was functioning normal again. So I think that um, in that process, all the anxiety and all the depression went. I had this low lingering anxiety that had continued. And after the Lyme treatment, my doctor said to me, in about 6 weeks, he said, you should notice that that's completely gone. And I wasn't really thinking about it, but I was on the phone with my sister, And she happened to ask me how I was doing. And I said, well, all my anxiety is gone. So the treatment followed an exact pattern that he indicated would happen. And I was functioning. And after about 2.5 years, almost 3 years, I was back to everything feeling normal, but it didn't stay that way for very long.
Okay. Um, so I just want to also just take a quick second to acknowledge the fact that for listeners, when we think about Lyme disease, you've talked on a couple of things here. We don't always get a bullseye rash. 35% of people get a bullseye rash. So no, that's not a fail safe. If you do have a rash, then yes, indeed, you've come into contact with Lyme. But again, for those of us with hair on our head, or maybe we don't have eyes in the back of our head to be able to see all of our body all the time, we might miss a rash even if it was there. So that's one thing I want to call out. But the other thing is, I always assumed that Lyme made your joints hurt and that you had a lot of physical pain. I didn't understand before I'd gone through it that it could be a neurological based issue. And so I just want, again, listeners to understand that it isn't necessarily physical pain. It isn't necessarily physical symptoms for everybody. It affects us all differently. It attacks different parts of our bodies. Once it sets in, it kind of maybe finds weak points and it will infiltrate those first. So mine definitely lived in my head as well. And I had a lot of neurological problems. I didn't really have physical pain problems. I had much more neurologically based challenges where so much at the end I thought I had a brain tumor because I couldn't understand what else could possibly be happening to me.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for pointing that out for people's sake that they do get that it's not always a physical expression. It can just be much more of a mental game, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I'm glad for you that you were at least able to get to somebody, especially back in that time frame, that was more familiar with the possibility that that could be what was happening to you. Because I think as of lately, it seems a little bit more attention has been brought to this, or maybe there's just so many more people infected that it's tipping the scales more into public knowledge. But I think,
Mm-hmm.
especially back then, not a lot of doctors really even knew about it or had heard about it. And my own dad was a Western medicine trained physician, and he said in medical school maybe they spent a half an hour talking about it, but that makes sense if we think about how complex a body is and how many different things you could possibly have going on. They can't spend eons elaborating on every individual topic. So, in a sense, at least I was happy for him that they did talk about it. I know when I had been bitten in the past, he knew enough to put me on antibiotics for 30 days, which I was grateful for, but many
Mm-hmm.
doctors just had no idea of its existence. So at least you were headed in the right direction, it sounds like. And then, so you're saying once your symptoms resolved and maybe 3 years in, you're feeling back to normal. What happened after that then?
I was normal for I would say a couple years, and because the doctor that was treating me was over an hour away, and he sometimes was ill from his symptoms of Lyme disease. I was also looking for a doctor closer to home. So I found a doctor that was only about maybe 40 minutes away. And I just went to visit him to say, I just need somebody else that could help me stay in remission, that would be knowledgeable. And he was very agreeable to do that. And he actually put me on a tincture of teasel root extract as a preventative. And I started with 1 drop and built up to a full dropper full. And I would just put that in my orange juice every morning. And about 3 years after I um, was in remission, I began to have these weird symptoms in my ears and my nose. And I don't normally get sinus problems or any upper respiratory issues. And so I called him up and he said, why don't you come on in and we'll do some testing? And he did some testing. And at that time, I think it was the Lyme and the Bartonella was active. And I guess one thing I've learned through my 20 years of dealing with this disease is there can be triggers that bring the disease back. So part of what I um, do is just trying to keep myself calm and out of stress, because it could be a physical trigger or an emotional trigger or a mental trigger. But I I teach group fitness exercise classes, and that's partly to keep myself physically in good shape. Uh, but I also, from a mental standpoint, I just try and keep myself on an even keel, try not to get too upset about things. And looking back, the trigger for my initial Lyme disease episode was having both moms die and that my daughter moving away. There was a lot of emotional trauma there, and that's what triggered it. So we began treatment. We did some antibiotics and we did some natural supplements. And one of the things that doctor did is he did IV therapy also in he had a back room where he had a bunch of recliners, and he had a like a vitamin supplementation that he did through IV, and he also did glutathione. So I got that IV directly into my system, which helped me fight the disease. That bout didn't last too long. I think I was back in remission in a little less than a year. And with that time that I had active Lyme disease, in addition to the upper respiratory symptoms I was having, I began to have joint pain and fatigue. Not just the kind of fatigue where you're just like, oh, I'm kind of tired, but no matter how much I slept or how much I rested, I was not refreshed when I woke up the next day. So all of those symptoms, after about a year of treatment, went back into remission as well.
Yeah, good job. Good job. Um, that's that's also bringing up some things for me to kind of highlight is just thinking about the fact that there are triggers for sure, and that's what I'm sitting here wondering as you're talking, like when you first experienced it in the first round, you've said you think possibly the trigger was having both your mother and mother-in-law pass away and then your daughter move away. Do you think that you got bitten right around that time? Or do you think that you were bit like way further ahead of that time and it just was festering or kind of laying dormant in your body and those triggers brought it out?
I think those triggers brought it out. I must have been bit way before that. And like I said, there's woods behind our backyard, and I played outside with the kids a lot. And I could have had, the tick bites are so tiny that I could have had one, maybe never had a rash, and never saw the bite. That's what I'm assuming happened.
Yeah, that's fair. And I think also for me, mine was a trigger related event that caused it to unleash its ugly head in my body. Um, because I played in the woods a lot when I was a kid too. And for people again listening, ticks secrete a numbing agent when they bite us, so you're not going to feel it. And they are very stealthy. They're very, 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 very small, like smaller than this tiny little hole here. It's smaller than a grain of sand, like the size of a poppy seed. They're
Hmm.
next to impossible to find. I found one on my arm a couple years back. I thought it was a speck of dirt and I flicked and it didn't come off right away. And I was like panicked because I knew exactly what it was. But I swear it was almost more of like um translucent or like a lighter color. It wasn't a dark black. Like I
Hmm.
have always picturing a black-legged tick, like it's going to be dark black. It was not. It was much lighter in complexion. And so that made it even harder to see on my skin in a sense. So they're so small and you won't feel them bite you. And again, you're not necessarily going to get the bullseye rash. So who knows if maybe all of us have been exposed to it at one point or another because especially living in this area, we know we are the highest rate of infection state for at least 12 years now in Pennsylvania.
Hmm.
How many people have it and then go through some type of stressor that agitates it, causes it to become active? And then I can't tell you how many people I've talked to have had knee replacements, hip replacements, joint replacements, and you name it. And then they come to find out later that they have Lyme and tick-borne illness. And potentially maybe they didn't need to have that joint replacement, that it was just because of side effect of what was going on with the Lyme and tick-borne illness, but without actually getting an accurate diagnosis. So that's another thing in when I rule the world, people here will get yearly screenings for it as a part of their annual physical, just like we get our cholesterol checked, just like we get tested for diabetes. You're gonna get tested for Lyme and tick-borne illness, and we're actually going to have accurate testing to do that with. So vote for me. I'll
That
make
would
it
be
happen.
important.
It would be a really nice thing. And I just think about how many people would be saved from long-term suffering, right? Like we have to say the CDC will even admit this 400 to 600,000 people a year are infected in our
Mhm.
country. That's a really big chunk of the population. And how many of them just live in a space of unwellness because they're getting older, or this is how you're supposed to feel, or you're stressed, and ultimately we know that the underlying cause for their problems is actually Lyme and tick-borne illness. So,
Right. Yeah.
again, a lot of good points that you're bringing up. So thank you for that. So
Well,
then
since you
go ahead.
mentioned hip re joint replacement, in almost 10 years ago, I felt a little bit of tightness in my right hip, but I continued teaching, but eventually it got worse, and I had to get physical therapy. I had an injection which didn't help, and finally the uh, physical therapist who was working on me said, I really think you should get an MRI. I think there's something going on with your hip. Long story short, I did get an MRI, and I was bone on bone. And uh, the physical therapist said he had never seen anyone go from basically I was walking okay to not functioning in a matter of about, it was less than 6 months. He said it usually takes people years to get to this point. And so when I went to my Lyme doctor to let him know what was going on, he said, I think what happened is the spirochetes from the Lyme disease just ate away the cartilage in your joint. And because I was only 58, I was very active in exercising. I took care of myself, but I did have the replacement and recovered from that with no problem. But it was something totally unexpected at that age.
I would imagine that's pretty young for sure to get a complete hip
Yes.
replacement. And it's also, I'm not necessarily like, I, again, it's just that you have like tangible proof that your body was okay. And then 6 months later, it had completely eroded to not having any cartilage there at all. Like, I know that it lives in our white matter, like the brain and cartilage and
Hmm.
spaces like that. But I don't know if I've ever heard anybody so succinctly say, like, my body disintegrated in a matter of 6 months because of what had happened. And so, that's pretty mind blowing to me. And I am related to some people in the orthopedic field. And I know that they are mindful of this as a possibility for people. And if they have swollen joints, et cetera, that they're draining fluids from, they will send them in for testing, which makes me feel a lot better to know at least part of our county is covered if they go to that person for these kinds
Hmm.
of things.
Yes.
Um, but I'm sorry that you had to experience that. I'm glad that it was successful for you. But again, that's a major surgery. Like we're getting part of our body cut out and replaced with something that's no longer ours. And that's, I'm grateful for Western medicine to be able to do that. But I don't want people to have to get to that point in the first place. And so then once this round passed, so this is your second go around with it, we got back into remission. Have you stayed in remission then since, or have you had flare-ups or different things cropping up for you?
I did have another flare up. I was in remission for a couple more years. And then I think it was in 2018, I just had a period of a couple days where I just couldn't move. I was tired. I mean, I wasn't tired, I was exhausted. Every joint in my body hurt. I had headaches, and I've never gotten headaches, and all those upper respiratory sinus problems came back. So it was like, and it came literally to me out of the blue. It lasted for about a week, and if you're not familiar with Lyme disease, when you have active Lyme disease and you're treating it, so you sometimes have what's called a Herxheimer reaction, which is when the bacteria is dying off in your body, but you're not getting rid of it fast enough. So it just makes everything in your body hurt, or you may have swelling or headaches. And that's exactly what it felt like. And I knew what that felt like. So I went back to the Lyme doctor. He ran some tests, and the Bartonella was active again, and so was the Lyme disease. So we started treatment again. We started off with antibiotics. They didn't seem to be doing a whole lot. So we decided to try some of the protocols that Dr. Horowitz has talked about with the DAP zone, but I couldn't tolerate the DAP zone. We even took it down to a compounded dose that was half of what they start with, and I just couldn't tolerate it. It I couldn't function while I was on it, and it made my pains even worse. So he decided not to do that, and so he actually switched me to two different other antibiotics along with some other supplements to make sure that I was detoxing properly, and probiotic to protect my GI tract as well. And I actually just recently went into remission. So that was in July of this year. I found out I was in remission. So that would be a 6 year battle with the Bartonella.
That's a
And
long
the
time.
way I found out I was in remission is I was seeing my third Lyme doctor, and I told her I felt almost normal, like everything seemed to be functioning okay. I wasn't tired. Uh, I I just felt better. She said, "So let's run some tests," and she ran the IGeneX test, and for all the different types of infections, and they all came back negative. And it was just like a burden lifted off my shoulder. And I have at this point continued to be in remission, and I do a couple things to help keep myself in remission. I continue to do some low level detoxing. I continue to take the teasel root extract every morning with my orange juice, and I continue with probiotics and prebiotics just to protect my GI tract.
Yeah.
So,
Mm, that's good. I often talk about this and just that it's like a permanent accountability coach once you get to remission and you're feeling better and normal again. And it's like, well, you can't just jump right back into the fast lane where you came from. You've really got to stay mindful and make wise decisions with your body and know that you're doing things to serve yourself in the capacity that you're in, right? Like if it
right,
is something that comes and goes, like much more like some of the other viruses that are more common, like herpes or whatever that comes and goes with stress or no stress, sun or no sun kind of thing, like um it's the same and it lives in our body. We're human organisms. We've got lots of things swimming around inside of us. And when our immune system is healthy and functioning well, it can keep those things at bay. And when we get overloaded or overburdened with toxins, et cetera, mold, whatever it is, that just makes it not function well. And these things can then come back into effect. And I often will talk to people who are like, oh, I had Lyme multiple times. And so like they're assuming that they've been bit multiple times. I don't necessarily think that's the case. I think sometimes you're just bit once and then it just is something again that goes into remission or becomes active again. And then also do know that you can get bit and get it more than once. Also, because that's another thing that people are like, well, you already had it. How could you get it again? And it's like, well, each tick carries its own little box of gifts to give to you. And
yes,
unfortunately, if it's something different that we've never been exposed to before, then potentially it's going to make us sick again. And the immune system is smart and can stand up to things that it's familiar with or has come into contact with. But there's over 300 kinds of Lyme worldwide. So you very well could be exposed to a different version that your body has no idea what it is. And you just have to go through the same process again, unfortunately, to fix whatever has been unleashed inside of you. And again, we're talking about all the different co-infections. Maybe you got a different co-infection than you had before, and body just doesn't really know how to do that as well. So it is possible to be bit more than once, but it is also possible to get sick multiple times from the same bite. So there is a little bit of a difference there for people. Um, so now 6 years later, that's a lot of time, Jackie. I'm sorry. Like that's
it is a
just,
lot of time.
I mean, and adding up all together, you're saying 20 years that you've been in this space, but it sounds like you were actively unwell for half of that, a decade.
Hmm.
A
I
decade of
was.
time has been consumed to not feeling well. And I'm sorry. I'm really glad that you're able to get yourself back to the other side. But it shouldn't be so tricky for people. And that's why we need more specialists. We need more people who can treat this and understand it. And we need to figure out a better way to do this for people because you shouldn't have to lose. And God knows how much money you spent on it, right? Like you're
Right.
educating me in the fact that now once you get into Medicare, a lot of the testing is covered. I'm not sure if that also covers your treatment. Um,
It depends on the doctor. The second doc, and by the way, I've had three excellent Lyme litter doctors. The first one actually, um, was in a car accident, and in trying to recover from that, he ended up dying because the Lyme disease just wouldn't allow his system to fight back. And so the very first doctor who had put me in remission, he passed away. My second doctor had a blood clot go to his lung unexpectedly. So I had to find this third doctor, and she's excellent. She's in the Philadelphia area. Now, Lyme doctors have different ways that they charge their fees. And um, she actually takes insurance. So from a Medicare standpoint, Medicare covers all my appointments, which is great. But then she charges an annual fee that covers the time she doesn't get reimbursed for, because each time I go to see her, she spends 45 minutes to an hour with me. We go over any questions I have, any test results she has. We talk about, should we try this? Do you want to try that? And I I am happy with the both the doctor and the fee structure, and not going to work for everybody. So that's part of why, if you even when I get referrals for doctors, I put right in the email, please call, find out what their fee structure is, find out what's going to work for you. But I always tell them very few doctors will take insurance, and that's confusing for some people, but that's primarily so that doctor or practitioner won't be brought up before insurance boards or even medical boards for prescribing long-term antibiotics for something that the CDC doesn't really agree with. So it's kind of like a tightrope that you're walking and trying to get treatment, and being able to afford it as well. So yes, we've spent thousands of dollars because supplements that come, even though my antibiotics and the appointments were pretty much covered, there's a lot of supplements that go with treatment and keeping your body in shape, and those are not covered. So
Yeah. And also you weren't at that age before. So
exactly.
that
Yeah.
only
It's only
kicked
been
in
the
at
last few years.
65 for you. Yeah. And
Yeah.
so there was a whole lot of time before that.
Yes.
That was not, and it was all out of pocket. And that's also a tough pill, pun intended in a sense, for people to swallow because, they're like, how is this not covered? How is this not something that insurance has to have skin in the game? And I can remember when we did the march in Harrisburg, in the back of the room were all the big wigs from the insurance companies, right? And why are they there? Why are they caring if we gather to try to get insurance to pay for this? I still scratch my head. Why would you possibly not want people to have access to using insurance to cover this? I pay my premiums every month. I pay my dues. Like there's nothing else wrong with me, knock on wood. And I really could have used that in that time because if we think about the stress being something that will make this more
Yes.
active in the body, leaving a doctor's appointment after you just shelled out $1,200 or $1,500, that'll make you cry and that'll really put a lot of
No.
stress on your body. And it just shouldn't be this way. But until we can do better, this is where we're at. So that will bring me to the next point of like, can you tell us a little bit more about what you're doing now? Because I know again that you're active with PA Lyme Resource Network. I really appreciate what you do for our organization and the role that you play. So if somebody is suspecting that they have Lyme and tick-borne illness, they can reach out on our website to get a little bit more information, and that's where you come in. So if you wouldn't mind just talking a little bit more about that, please.
Sure. So it was actually last November that I became a referral coordinator. PA Lyme Resource Network had reached out through email saying they were looking for a volunteer to uh, take over the referrals. So I happened to answer that email because I thought I've gotten such great support, not just from that organization, but other Lyme organizations. And one of the things I do well is Excel spreadsheets and Word, and it's one of the things I actually enjoy doing. So I answered the ad, went through a couple interviews, and the way it works is people go to the website, palyme.org, and under resources, one of the resources you can click on is find a Lyme doctor. And if people click on that, they put in their name, their city they're from, their zip code, and if there's any other information they want us to know. And that's the information that comes to me. And once I get that information, I have a list of about, I'm going to say 25 to 30 doctors across Pennsylvania, and they've been vetted by our board. We don't just add doctors, we actually take time. When we get a new doctor, I just recently went through this process. Uh, we have them fill out a detailed questionnaire, and then we call and talk with them for about 45 minutes to get a feel for how they treat, what their fee structure is, how long do people have to wait, what's their training, what's their background, and then we can add that doctor to the list once they're approved by the board. So if somebody sends an email asking for a referral, I actually put in their town on a Google map, and then I know where they're located, and I pretty much know the locations of most of the doctors in Pennsylvania, and we also have doctors in New Jersey and New York as well. And
Right.
I give them 3 to 4 of the doctors as close as possible to their location. And then it's their responsibility to contact them. And if they have further questions, they can certainly call me back. And in addition to doing the Lyme referrals, I'm in several Lyme support groups on Facebook, and I'll sometimes answer questions or help people, usually with non-medical questions. What do they think of this supplement, or what are they doing for that? Or sometimes if people are looking for a doctor, I'll put the link to palyme.org if I feel like we can help them. And then I also have a blog that I maintain. It's called Hope Through Chronic Illness. And in there, I write mostly about my experience with Lyme, different things to give people hope if they're traveling through uh, a chronic illness journey and they might not know what it is, or they're waiting for a diagnosis. So I write that primarily just to give people hope.
That's amazing. I didn't know that about you, so thank you for enlightening me with that tidbit about you.
Sure.
If somebody wants to read that blog, how do they find you for that?
All they have to do is type in their browser hopethroughchronicillness.com.
Great.
Just type those words out and the blog should come right up.
Great. Thank you. And then
Yeah,
you
thank
can
you.
follow you on there. Is
Sure,
that?
they can follow, you can subscribe, and anytime there's a post, they will get a new posting. So yes, they can do that.
Yeah, I appreciate you again just being such a soft place for people to land because we know that, I mean, when I first got diagnosed, I was like, oh, okay. My family doctor was willing to help me, but her knowledge extent is only so wide, and so um once my brain started to work a little bit better and I could actually like communicate with humans again, because I really lost the ability to even have a conversation that flowed
Me
with
too.
people. I felt really compelled to start a support group here in Berks County, but I partially did it selfishly because I wanted to know who to help me, right? Like I was like, well, if I do
Yep.
this, I'm gonna get the inside track and then I'm gonna know who I need to see to help me get better. And I remember my first ILEDS conference and I was like, that lady right there, that's gonna be who I'm gonna go see. And I am forever grateful to her. She'll be on my show coming up soon, but she got me maybe 85% of the way. And the rest I had to do on my own, which is okay.
Hmm.
She helped save my life tremendously and I'm just very grateful, but um it is a little bit overwhelming. It is scary. It depends on how much you Google and what kind of information you find that maybe you don't want anything to do with this and you're like, nope, can't possibly be Lyme. We were talking about that a little bit before. It's like, no, I'm going to keep going down the MS road, or I'm going to keep going down chronic fatigue or fibromyalgia or whatever it is that people choose to think it is instead. And that's fine. It usually will circle their way back to us, but it's great to have direct resources that really understand it firsthand because we've lived it. But secondly, like we know where to send people, we know how to guide people more gracefully through it. I've talked about this on past episodes, but this unfortunately is something that is very time sensitive, right? And the longer that you go with Lyme and tick-borne illness living in your body, the more damage it does, the harder it usually is to get out. I've seen
Hmm.
people lose their life over it. And you can get acutely sick right away, but I think the cases that really get missed long term are the ones that are more of a gradual decline. If you're suddenly instantly sick and you need to go to the hospital because you're that sick, usually I think they find it in those people and you're still getting treated right away because I think those people got bit by a very virulent tick and It just made them
Mhm.
super sick that they're able to get antibiotics on board. And my understanding is that 70% of people who get treated right away will go on with no long-term problems. But it's the people that fall through the cracks again, that just sort of slowly decline or degrade, that really have the challenges that they're just, it's just much harder to get better. So, um, it's if you're struggling again, you're not sure about things, reach out to PA Lyme Resource Network, go to palime.org. You'll get connected here with Jackie. She will be able to give you some specialists in the area that you're close to. And I'm glad that you touched on that. I was wondering if it's just PA, but I thought it was going to be surrounding states as well, that
Mhm.
you have some tips for getting to a specialist faster. And as you can hear from Jackie's story, it's not necessarily a fast fix either. So I would encourage you, if you choose someone to help you with treatment, to stick with them for at least 6 months. Give them a fair shake at helping you. It's very frustrating when you're unwell, you want to feel better right away. We've been pushed into a society that is expecting immediate gratification and take a pill and you're going to be better. But it's not necessarily like that with something as complicated as Lyme and tick-borne illness. Again, it can infiltrate every organ in our body, and that's not something that can be quickly shushed out. You really have to do some work and some due diligence and maintenance and paying attention to what's going on in your body and your environment. Something else that a lot of my guests talk about is mold exposure and what that has done to their immune system. And if you are struggling with Lyme and tick-borne illness, make sure that you're not in a moldy space because it's an immunosuppressant. It really makes the battle even that much harder to recover your wellness if you're exposed to that. And heavy metals is another one to keep in mind as well. But you just want to make sure that you're getting tested for everything in that box. All the tick-borne illnesses, mold, and heavy metals, and start there. But it is important for you to get to a specialist, again, somebody who really understands things. When you get the results back on your test, it's like, mm, maybe you only have two bands for the CDC test. And I always want to know, like, how do you have any bands if you've not been exposed to it? How are you testing
Mhm.
positive to anything? I know that they say you need to have five bands specific to their test to qualify as 100% certainty, but they've even admitted that that's not necessarily correct. That's for 100% certainty. But clinically speaking, we know people can exhibit all kinds of symptoms and they only have one band or two bands, and that's not technically called Lyme disease. But like, how do you have anything in your body if you've not been exposed to it? That doesn't make sense to
Mhm.
me. I don't see how
Right.
anyone can argue that logic. Like, clearly you've been exposed if you have any kind of it coming out of your body. Like, so there's a lot of work to be done, but it is really great to be part of a group like PA Lyme Resource Network and to have people like Jackie who, again, really understand it firsthand, who can help guide you more succinctly, more gracefully, if you will, through this process to get back to wellness sooner. And when you're struggling, so I remember I just felt so alone. You're not alone. First of all, God is always with us. But secondly, there are groups like PA Lyme Resource Network. There's a lot of great groups out there, Global Lyme Alliance, Illinois Lyme Association, like all different states have different groups. And that's another thing that may be sort of challenging in that we all have different groups. It would be nice if we could unite under one giant
One big group.
United States of America Lyme Association or something
Mhm.
so that all of our efforts were coming out at the same place because we all are ultimately fighting for the same thing, which is justice for people, health and wellness for people going through it. But it's a lot of grassroots organizations. It's a lot of people who have experienced it that dedicate a portion of their life to helping others through it because we know what it cost us. I never want to think of it as a cost, but dang it, like it took me 7 years just to get a diagnosis. That cost me my sanity, right? Like I was ready to just tap out because I thought I was a crazy person and God made me funny. Like I
Mhm.
I I couldn't understand what was happening. And so it shouldn't be that. And then, another 7 or 8 years to fix myself and a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of effort. And you don't really get it until you get it. And I don't want people to have to get it. I know you don't want people to have to get it to understand that, but heed our warning that this is something that you really do need to take seriously and you need to make sure that you're taking the best preventative action against it. What would be one thing that you could tell people about prevention that you think is an important one for people to remember in terms of keeping themselves safer?
I would say that um, there are there are if you go outdoors, if you're doing landscaping, if you're a person that does hiking in the woods or anything, a hunter, um, there are products out there that you can spray on your clothing and your skin that repels ticks. And I would definitely look into those. I do a lot of the landscaping on our property as far as weeding and cutting things back. So before I go out, I make sure I'm protected. And then as soon as I come in, I take a look through my whole body and make sure that there's nothing on me. If I see a little black spot, I take a look at it, make sure it's not dirt, or make sure it is dirt and not a tick. I did find, I think it was yeah, it was in the spring of this year. I was out doing some work and I didn't take a shower right away. I did some other things when I came in the house. It was a couple hours later and I went to shower and I found a tick on me. And it's the first tick I've ever seen. So I actually took a pair of special tick removers and removed the tick. And I didn't have any ill effects from it, maybe because I was already treating, but you have to examine yourself when you come in and make sure that you're taking care of yourself. And if you already have Lyme disease, if you're being treated by a doctor, ask them if there's something you should be taking as a prevention. I have a few supplements I take that just boost my immune system and may help prevent a tick-borne infection from taking place. And I guess the other big thing is just trying to, you can't remove all stress from your life, but um, I'm a Christian. I do a lot of prayer, so I take a lot of things to prayer and uh, just asking for me to be calm in all situations because I know stress can be a trigger to bring on a new infection.
Yeah, those are some very wise words there. And I've often thought about this. Like, I'm told if you eat a lot of garlic, they don't like the way that you smell. Or B vitamins are also supposedly a repellent for them. And I eat those too because
Me too. I
lately,
take B vitamins.
yeah, I've been swallowing a whole garlic clove every day. That's my new thing lately. It's not bad, actually. It goes down pretty easy as long as it's not a huge one. Um, but yeah, just to more prevent, again, prevention is the name of the game here, and keeping your immune system functioning well so that if you do happen to get bit, you do not succumb to the sickness, that your body is actually able to conquer it and the initial steps. You've also made me think about another thing. When you found that tick on you, did you happen to send it in for testing, or did you just keep it and in case something weird happened?
No, I did. I sent it in for testing. I sent it to the place in East Stroudsburg. Is that Tick Lab? I'm not sure.
.org.
Yes, okay,
Ticklab.org.
that's where I sent
Yep.
it. And
Yep.
I didn't quite have the whole tick, so I wasn't sure if because when I got it out completely, but it didn't come out in one piece. But I sent what they had, and they said, no, that was fine. And they tested, they didn't find any infection or diseases in the tick, which was good news.
Huge relief, huge relief.
Yes,
That's what I did with
yes.
the one I found too, was send it in, and I could have spent probably 48 hours locked in a padded room waiting for the results. But that's a great service that is available for people if you're wanting your tick tested. No, they can test ticks a lot more readily and easily than people. And you can send that to ticklab.org and put it in a Ziploc baggie. Be nice to the mailman. Don't put him at risk either of the tick crawling out of the envelope. Put it in a little baggie, send it. I actually put mine through FedEx because I wanted it to get there as fast as possible. But you can pay. They'll do, I think, free screening for some basic things. But if you want to really understand if there's anything going on with that tick, you can pay a little bit extra. I don't remember,
Mhm.
$75, $100 or something. Me, it was worth the peace of mind to know if it had any other co-infections. But I remember reading in the state of Pennsylvania, 1 out of 2 ticks was infected with tick-borne illness. And that does not give you that good of an outcome. If you happen to get bit by a tick, you have a 1 in 2 chance of it not being sick or it being sick. So like I don't want to roll the dice with that. I really want to know what's going on with that. So I'm glad we have access to a good lab like that here in PA, but I'm pretty sure anyone from anywhere can send their tick into ticklab.org and they
Mhm.
will be able to test that and give you your results pretty quickly so that you should know if you need to get on antibiotics or not. Because that's often a question I get from people. Should I start the antibiotics? And I'm always like, yeah, because I know that they chew up your insides, right? And they're not, we don't want to overuse them. But I also remember when someone told me that I shouldn't be taking them, that you should save it for when you're trying to actually save your life or you're really sick. And that person almost lost their life because I was like, how dare you? I'm almost losing my life. This almost cost me my life. This is the time that I'm going to be utilizing my antibiotic quota and hopefully I
Mhm.
never have to take them again. But at that time, I was happy to pop those pills and fix myself. But if you're able to get your test results, if you're one of the lucky people who sees the tick and you find it, you can get your results within 48 to 72 hours. And I think that's still enough of a time window where you could just wait. And then if you get your results and it's positive, to start taking the antibiotics and know that you need to do that. And you're still hitting them within a reasonable time frame. But um, that's something great that we have access to.
Yes.
Um, yeah. And then as a final question for you, Jackie, can you tell me, you've given me so much good information. Thank you. What has been the best thing that's happened to you as a result of getting Lyme and tick-borne illness?
I would say the best thing is meeting so many people in this community who just persevere and don't give up and are so willing to help each other because it's a disease that is different for each person because you may have different infections and your body may react differently. But uh, just the support, I can reach out to. I'm in several support groups on Facebook as well as having friends that I can call and I can say, I'm really having a bad day. I'm just really tired or my joints ache and I just can't do much today. And I will get many, many messages of hope and encouragement. And so I think being part of a community of fighters and warriors, and also just I guess it's caused me to be more compassionate toward other people. Um, you never know what other people are dealing with. Like if people see me out and about, or even teaching a fitness class, and they don't know me, they'd have no idea that I was struggling and fighting several infections or taking, 20 supplements a day to keep myself functioning. So I think it's helped me to not be judgmental of other people, but to be more compassionate and understanding of people and what they may be dealing with in their everyday life.
Yeah, and that's a beautiful gift to receive, right? Like we
Yes.
all have our issues, we're all human, and sometimes it's very easy to just be like, ah, what's the matter with that person? And then it's like, slow your roll, slow your roll. You really might not even have a clue of what that person is experiencing because again, I alluded to this earlier, but this is an invisible illness and you look
Mhm.
fine, but inside you're dying. And like I was relegated to a shell of a human. Like there was nobody inside. It was all I could do just to breathe some days.
Yep.
And but people were like, "Well, you look fine." And I'm like, huh, "But I'm not," And so that's a really good gift to be given. Although I'm sure if you had, well, that's a good question. Would you choose this path if you had it to do differently? Would this be something that you would willingly accept, or would you give it all back and say, "No, I don't want anything to do with this"?
It's a hard road to walk. Um, I don't know that I would choose it, but I don't think I would be the person I am today without it. I think I'm a much stronger person. I persevere through things a lot more than I did even 10 years ago. And I think it's made me, I'm not as afraid of the unknown. People often are afraid, well, what's going to happen? What's going to be ahead of me? And with Lyme disease, the the journey can sometimes be that way. So I have tried to just be grateful. I guess part of it is I'm grateful for every day that I have and just try and be in the present. Not worry about tomorrow, not think about what happened in the past. I'm not saying that never happens, but I try and function in the present because this is really all I'm guaranteed. And if I'm having a great day, I I just enjoy being and having that good day. And when I don't have the great days, I just know there's a lot of other people that may be suffering just like me. And when I'm having the good days, I try and reach out and encourage others. And when I'm having a bad day, I reach out and ask for that encouragement.
Yeah. And that's also another good gift in the sense that you can ask for help. I struggle with that, and I think a lot of people struggle with that. And this is something that sort of teaches us that we can't take the world on alone. We do need to ask for help sometimes. And I'm grateful that you're acknowledging that as well in this. And again, I just appreciate the information that you have, the wealth of knowledge that you present. And I know that you are active on social media. So if people want to find you there, they can. They can also look for your blog, Hope Through Chronic Illness, which I think is a really beautiful way to give back. And for heaven's sake, you're a coordinator now for people for referrals for what to do with themselves. And that is definitely taking on a mighty job. And I'm really glad that we have you on our team to be there for people. If you're interested to reach out to Jackie, again, she is on Facebook. I think under your name, maybe you have your maiden name listed as well.
Yeah, I think it's Jackie Euler Confalone, but if they type Jackie Confalone, they'll find me.
Yep, yep. So please feel free to reach out to Jackie. You can reach out to me if you have questions about this. We will do our best to get you to where you need to go through this, but you ultimately will need to be your own best advocate. No two people are the same. This is not meant to be medical diagnosis for you. This is just meant to give you a different perspective, a different route, a different avenue to possibly explore for yourself. And if you're needing more specifics, again, reach out. But thank you for listening. And again, don't forget our parent organization. If you are having a couple extra bucks to spare, please reach out to PA Lyme Resource Network, palyme.org online, and feel free to donate. You can donate once, you can donate monthly, however you like to do it. But it is through people like myself and Jackie that that organization exists. And it's just strictly because we've had such and it's had such an impact on us that we are compelled to give back to the community and help people stay safer.
Yep.
Again, thank you for your time, Jackie.
Yep. Thank you.